Robert, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to see you. I see these beautiful tall bottles. What do you got for us today?
Well, I figured if we were going to taste anything, we best taste our bourbon that won Best Bourbon in the World from Whiskey Magazine back in 2020.
Nice.
So,
Well, let's do it.
we're going to jump into Harbinger.
Yeah.
Go big or go home. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It stays with you.
It's a big boy.
You can feel it.
Oh, yeah.
You can feel it like all over the body is in here.
Yeah, this is 115 proof. I mean, it's full bodied.
Yeah.
It's got everything going on with it. Oh, yeah.
Is it that French technique?
That gives it kind of its flavors. Yeah. So the French techniques, what they really help us do, especially the élevage process, is really kind of cater to every single barrel. One of the benefits of being a small distillery is that we have the ability to go and take care of every single barrel individually. The guys up in Kentucky, some of them have millions of barrels.
Sure.
You can't go through and taste a million barrels. You'll be dead if you try to do that. So for us and a lot of the French distillers, though, we're able to treat barrels kind of like kids. And that's really what the term élevage means, is to raise like you would a kid.
Okay.
And so every barrel kind of has its own personality. Even if you take the exact same whiskey, put exact same type of barrels right next to each other, one's going to be sweet, one's going to be spicy, one's going to be herbal. I mean, if you've got multiple kids or you got a sibling, you know, even though you had the same genes getting put into you, you generally end up a little bit different from each other.
A little bit different, I know that.
And so barrels are the exact same way.
Yeah.
And for us, you can't raise every barrel the same exact way to get the best out of that barrel. For us, we want the spicy barrels to be these big, beautiful spicy barrels. We want those big caramel barrels to be that luscious caramel flavor. We want the fruit barrels to really develop all those different fruity notes that are going to go into that whiskey ultimately. And by us aging them in different parts of the warehouse, by changing proof during the course of aging, by using different types of oak with the barrels, we're really able to achieve a bunch of different flavors and allows us to really paint a really beautiful picture at the end of the day.
No, I love it. I love it. And where do you how do you figure out like what part of where do you put the barrels? Like, there's no shade in Texas. Come on now.
Sure. It is really hot in Texas. And honestly, I think that's one of the big challenges, but also one of the really big benefits of aging whiskey in Texas, because it is hot for most of the year.
Yes.
But we also have these giant temperature swings. So that whiskey gets forced in and out of that barrel constantly, way more than it does in Kentucky or in Scotland. And so what happens is, with that much more interaction with the wood, you're pulling in those oak flavors, those oak compounds at a much faster rate, but you're also evaporating much faster. So you're concentrating down all those flavors into a much smaller amount of liquid. So that's when you look like a whiskey like this, which is, like 3 to 5 years old. This is significantly darker than like a 6 to 8-year-old Kentucky bourbon.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all that flavor. Now, if you just let the barrels kind of do what they're doing, or they just get really pounded by heat, what ends up, you can end up with something that's just oaky and spicy.
Okay.
And sometimes that's not as pleasant to drink something that's that intense. And so a lot of the French techniques, by, again, adding water at certain times during the aging process or changing where it's aging in the warehouse, really allows us to kind of mellow and really help that barrel become its best version, allows it to stay in barrel longer. We're able to achieve a lot of different things by kind of this process.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like the idea around that French style technique, you really have to work with Texas climate.
You're right.
Right?
100%.
You can't work against it.
No. You can't fight it. If you fight it, then it's just you're gonna end up screwing up.
Yeah. Well, tell me about a little bit about the distillery and what inspired you from the beginning, because you really are a true family business, right?
Oh yeah. Mom's the big boss. Don't let anyone lie to you on that one. So as far as like jumping into Texas whiskey or jumping into starting a distillery, like that was really like a process that came about, one, from realizing I didn't want to be a lawyer when I graduated from law school, and my brother wanting to kind of really express a lot of his creativity that he had. And engineering, obviously, is very strict, very proper.
Yeah, right.
And don't get me wrong, a lot of that is ingrained in him and is really important to our processes. But he wanted to be able to play around with things, and that's whiskey is kind of a playground, to be quite honest with you, because every little piece of the puzzle, every little thing you do can change your final outcome.
Yeah.
And so you really have a lot of ownership over that final product and that where you end up with that whiskey.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you make that drastic change, I would say? Was it already there and you were, maybe just a great bourbon whiskey drinker, and you're like, I really have to invest my life into this?
Yeah.
Because you hear that a lot, right? We're like, oh yeah, former lawyer, I was in finance, an engineer, and now we're distilling whiskey.
I think for those who get bit by the distilling bug, like this is a business that's not for the faint of heart. It is very intense. It's very long process. Again, going to a bank and asking for a loan. We got a lot of laughs whenever we told them the business plan of aging something for 4 years.
Yeah.
It's not really...
Before you sell it?
Exactly. We don't want to make any money for 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
Banks really love that business plan. So like going to this, you have to be a little bit off your rocker, I would say. You have to have a little bit of craziness as part of who you are. And you have to have a huge passion for it, because diving into something every day, tasting whiskey every day, playing around with nuances of whiskey, and reading up on yeast and different yeast varietals, or different oak and different types of blends of oak, or yard aging. I mean, there's so many things you have to drill down into to truly understand what the choices you're making and what the results of those choices are going to be. Yeah. And so I'd say that you have to have that insane, like nerdy passion for what it is to sit down and taste and go, what in the world is this? And I think a lot of us that start distilleries, you sit down, you taste, and you go, wow, why does that taste so surprising? It's that first time you have that whiskey that's kind of that wow moment of, this is not at all what I've had before, or completely surprised me. Right. Some people get it with wine. We got it with whiskey.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. So do you see a lot of folks coming on the Texas Whiskey Trail? And, you're at the border of Oklahoma. Can I say that? I don't know if I can say that on a Texas podcast.
Oh, yeah. We get a ton of visitors a year. I mean, right now we're seeing a little over 10,000 visitors a year at our distillery in a little town of Denison that's 25,000 people. So to me, it still blows my mind how many people come from all over Texas, but also all over the country. And even we have had people who will fly into DFW. They will create a big enough window for them to be able to drive up to the distillery and then go back to the airport to fly into their next location. So we've had a ton of visitors from Japan and Taiwan and the UK and France. Obviously, a ton from France for us. But it really is kind of a humbling experience too, that people are coming to explore what you do.
Right. And it sounds like you have a niche. Are there people that don't know and they're like, oh, blown away by this whole new process?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's still even people in our town to this day that are surprised when they show up. It's so much fun that when you have someone who has a preconceived notion of what bourbon is or what whiskey is, and you're able to show them kind of all these different things that they had no idea about. Like one of the things we focus with on the Ironroot side of our line is use of heirloom corns. And most people have no idea that there's tens of thousands of species of corn, every color of the rainbow, in fact, naturally occurring rainbow colored corns. And the different corns taste different. Some of them really different. Yeah, they do. And that transforms into some really beautiful whiskeys at the end of the day.
How do you source your grains?
So for us, 95% of the grain that we use comes within 60 miles. So we're very, very locally focused. That was one of the things when we were being taught by Hubert that really got beat into us. I think the French really beat into you this notion they call terroir. And terroir means flavor of the land. So it's really trying to embrace what things from your place taste like. And I can even tell you some of the corns, I can tell whether they're growing up closer to the Red River, where you have more like sand, more limestone in the soil, or south of 82, south of our city, where you have a lot more black land prairie. That actually impacts the flavor of the corn. And I would have never believed that had I not sat there and done that.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. So what attracted you to that style? Like you could have done, probably like any other distillers around Texas, but what attracted you to that style?
Well, we like to do things that are hard. No, no. For us, it is a passion for local agriculture. I think that's something that we've seen in recent years that's going away. That you're losing a lot of your regional agriculture. And for us, we found that a lot of the farmers, they were wanting to do something that really went back to a little bit older style of farming, being able to save your seed, to replant your seed, and it was kind of us wanting to eat local and wanting to see what can we do to support those local farms, and then going back even historically and finding for us what was growing in our area, in 1950 and 1910,
right,
and trying to bring some of those things back and making sure we're supporting that local agriculture, but also supporting the diversity of agriculture. I think for me, having all these different things that taste different. I mean, we all see it in wine every day. Like, we all know Chardonnay and Merlot. They're two very different wines made from two very different grapes.
Yeah.
But the same is true with corn. And that to me was just mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what you're talking about is sustainability, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And that's, part of the idea around like, hey, what's in my backyard, right? And how do we support not only, how do we utilize the resources that are around us, but as well as how do you invest in maybe the local community?
So for me, I think what was really kind of heartening was in the last couple of years, we were approached by a professor, Dr. Winway, who works with Texas A&M, Texas Tech, on kind of taking ancient corn genetics and naturally breeding them into modern corn so that we can save some of that diversity of genetics, and working with him to, again, see what the applications are for distilling. And the same thing with the Texas AgriLife. Those guys have been amazing over the years, helping us get farmers to grow some of these specialty corns for us.
Yeah. Well, when, I think when people in Texas, they think of corn, they think of yellow corn.
Right.
Right?
100%.
Yeah. So what are the varieties that you're using?
So over the last decade, we've actually distilled over 65 different species of corn. We've got a kind of a core three that we do that's on the heirloom side. One's going to be Bloody Butcher corn. It's a beautiful red corn. We have an Incan corn that's this purple corn that came from Peru originally. And then we also have a flint corn called Floriani that was originally from the southern U.S., but actually they found it still growing in northern Italy, and they brought it back, and we're starting growing again. It's a cool corn. It's the only spicy corn we've ever found.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super, super fun.
Maybe it came with like chamoy or something.
Exactly. No, 100%. 100%.
Well, this has been amazing to learn from you and listen to you talk passionately about, obviously your process. So this is my final question. Just sitting here today and looking back when you just started, day one, what advice would you give yourself?
Slow down, I think, is could be one of the biggest ones. I mean, early on, with any business, I think a lot of people run into issues early on with equipment or distribution, and I think sometimes I panicked when things weren't going 100% right. So I would stop and tell myself, take a breath, take the time, everything's going to be okay.
Nice. Yeah. And that comes back to sustainability, right?
100%.
Like that slow process.
Yeah. Slow and easy.
Yeah.
The whiskey's still going to be there.
It will be there. So with that, thank you so much for being on the show.
Cheers.